Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see you again, Madam Secretary. I have a few questions with regard to Iran and HIV/AIDS funding. First of all, there are mixed signals, I believe, coming from the administration about exactly how we are going to prevent Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons. And these mixed signals concern not only myself, but many in our country. On one hand, we've seen the saber rattling before in the lead up to the war with Iraq. Take, for example, the movement of battleships to the Persian Gulf and surveillance flights. On the other hand, we've heard many in the administration speak about how the president and yourself, but the president said how preposterous it is to believe that we're preparing for an attack or an invasion. Then National Security Advisor Stephen Hadley said, and this is his quote, "The president has said very clearly that the issues we have with Iran should be solved diplomatically." So these mixed signals, quite frankly, are quite confusing. So I'd just like to ask you, what is our policy toward Iran? Is it working? Also, Madam Secretary, is the administration committed to seek a diplomatic resolution to the challenges posed by Iran and its nuclear ambitions, even though, and I assume and everyone has said that the military option continues to stay on the table? But if the president also, this is the final part of this question, if he decides to use force against Iran, would he seek congressional authority? I think American taxpayers are quite concerned about their funds being used for another preemptive attack on another country.
Well, Congresswoman, on Iran, the president's made very clear that he not just seeks a diplomatic solution, but that he believes one is possible concerning the Iranian nuclear program. And obviously, an Iranian nuclear weapon would be a great danger to not just our interests, but to the region. One could imagine the kind of arms race that might set off in the Middle East itself, in the world's most volatile region. And so we have been very active internationally to get a diplomatic solution. That diplomatic solution has to come through the unity of the international community in saying to the Iranians that if they are not prepared to give up their nuclear weapons ambitions, then they're going to be isolated in the international community. And I think we've had some very good successes on that. The first is we had a UN Security Council resolution just about 3 months ago. I think we are moving rapidly toward a second Security Council resolution. That Security Council resolution is demonstrating to Iran that there is a unified voice that will continue to pursue its isolation if it stays along this course. We have been able to support that UN course by financial measures that the United States has taken against certain Iranian entities that are engaged in proliferation or terrorist activities, the designation of banks. And that, frankly, has made it difficult for Iran to deal in the international financial institutions and financial system where people are worried about reputational risk and investment risk. I think you've seen that there's been a decrease in investment credits for Iran, that they're having trouble getting investment in some of their oil and gas activities. And these are all pressures, I think, on the Iranian government. Now, this is all aimed at changing Iran's behavior, changing the regime's behavior. Not by looking for moderate forces in Iran, I don't think that's an appropriate phrase, but looking for reasonable forces in Iran who might recognize that the course that they're on is destructive. We've also left open a course that would be constructive by laying out with the other 5 parties, the European 3, Germany, France, and Great Britain, Russia, and China, an extensive package of economic and trade incentives that Iran could take up.
Sure. Madam Secretary, let me ask you before my time is up. Could you then explain under what circumstances would the military option be considered or exercised, and would, in fact, the President come to Congress seeking authority for that action?
Well, I think the President always has to keep his options available to him, but he's been very clear that this is something that should be resolved through diplomacy and that he thinks can be resolved through diplomacy. I'm not going to get into a discussion of constitutional prerogatives here. I don't think this is the place to do that, but I will say that, as has always been the case, the President would, as he has done in the past, seek to consult with Congress and understands the congressional role in foreign policy. If I just may say, Congresswoman, because you said we're doing things in the Gulf and that may be inconsistent with the diplomacy, I actually think they're mutually reinforcing, because we faced the situation a number of months ago where I think the Iranians perhaps did not take seriously our willingness to keep our presence in the Gulf, a presence in the Gulf that has been there since Franklin Roosevelt, where we've always been willing to defend our interests and our allies. And the carrier strike group and the PAC-3s are simply a signal that the United States is present in the Gulf.
Sure, it could be provocative, Madam Secretary, and could be perceived as provocative.
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. I understand that, but sometimes one needs leverage, and people have to take you seriously. I think the Iranians are taking us seriously these days, and I think it's helping our diplomacy.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Mr. Wolf?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions. One,